My name is Captain Rachel Monroe, 34 years old, 3 deployments down. Iraq again. Same desert heat, same convoys, same body bags zipped in silence. But this time, something inside me twisted hard enough that I couldn't ignore it. A voice in my gut whispered, "Don't tell anyone you're coming home." And I listened. So I didn't send a text, didn't make a call, didn't post a photo with a flag and a filter like so many soldiers do. I just packed my ruck, handed in my rifle, and boarded a plane that carried me 22 hours across the ocean back to American soil. No welcome banners, no cameras, just me, alone with the hum of the aircraft and a silence I wore like armor. By the time my boots hit the cracked sidewalk outside my grandmother's farmhouse in Ashford, North Carolina, the sun was bleeding low through the pine trees. The air smelled like honeysuckle and dust, and for a split second, I almost fooled myself into thinking I was home for a holiday, like when I was 16. But then I noticed the first bad sign. The porch light was off. Grandma never left it off. Not once in all my years. Even during power outages, she kept a lantern glowing by the window. Said it was her way of telling me, "You'll always have a light here." But now, nothing. Just shadows crawling over the porch step. I swallowed hard and knocked. The sound echoed too long in the silence. No answer. I knocked again, louder. Still nothing. That's when I pulled out the key, the same brass one Grandpa pressed into my hand on my 13th birthday. "If you ever need to come home and no one's here, this will still work." His voice had been steady, his eyes sharp, like he already knew a day like this would come. The lock clicked, and I stepped into a stillness so heavy it pressed down on my chest like a concrete slab. The house smelled wrong. Not dirty, not rotten, just hollow. Like no one had breathed inside these walls for too long. "Grandma?" My voice broke the quiet, but it sounded foreign, like I didn't belong here anymore. I checked the living room first. Everything in its place. Remote lined up neatly on the coffee table. Blanket folded over the armchair with military precision. My throat tightened. The kitchen was spotless, not a dish out of place. A vase stood empty on the counter, bone dry. Then I saw the boots, Grandma's garden boots, tucked neatly by the back door. Waiting. Just like always. But the silence told me something else. No one had been here for days. And in that moment, standing in the house that once held laughter and Sunday dinners, I knew I was about to find something I wasn't ready for. I forced my legs down the hallway, every step heavy like I was wading through mud. The air grew colder, the silence sharper. I pushed open the bedroom door, and that's where I found her. Grandma lay in the hospital bed we had set up after her stroke 2 years ago. Same blue quilt, same floral pillowcase, but now machines crowded around her like silent guards. Oxygen hissed in weak bursts. A monitor blinked green every few seconds. Her hands were limp against the blanket. One eyelid half open, like she was trying to wake up but couldn't quite remember how. I froze in the doorway, my stomach clenched into steel and sand. "Grandma!" My voice cracked as I moved closer. Her skin was pale, cool under my fingertips when I brushed her hand. She didn't stir. No nurse, no aide, no family, just her and the machines. I looked around the room. No water glass, no flowers, no cards, no fresh laundry folded on the chair. Nothing that showed anyone had been here in days. The only sound was that cruel machine breathing for her, reminding me with every hiss that she was alive but alone. I sat at her bedside, straightened her blanket, wiped the corner of her mouth with a tissue. The military teaches you to act first, feel later. But in that moment, the two collided inside me. I wanted to scream, to break something, but all I could do was whisper, "It's me, Grandma. Rachel's home." Her chest rose, fell, rose again. No change. The guilt hit me first, a sharp jab under my ribs. Had I waited too long to come back? And then the anger followed, hotter, stronger. Not at her, at them. I reached for my phone, hoping maybe I missed something. Maybe Mom had left a message. Maybe Dad had called. But my screen was empty of any concern. Instead, a fresh notification glared back at me. Instagram. There they were. My parents, smiling in sunglasses with cocktails in hand. A caption sprawled beneath the photo. Sunsets in Cabo never get old, finally living free, no regrets. No regrets. While their mother was lying here alone, half-conscious, counting her breaths with machines, they were sipping margaritas on a beach. My hand shook so hard I almost dropped the phone. I stared at their faces, the ones that used to look like home. Now they looked like strangers. Smiling strangers who had abandoned the woman who raised us all. Something inside me shifted. The numb soldier part of me cracked, and in its place, something sharp took root. This wasn't neglect. This wasn't busyness. This was abandonment. I leaned closer to my grandmother's ear. You're not alone anymore. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. And in that moment, I swore silently that she would never take another breath alone again. After sitting by her side for what felt like hours, my eyes wandered to the photo on the dresser. Grandpa in his old army uniform, standing tall with that steady gaze that seemed to cut through time. And then I remembered. His study, his safe, his words. If anything ever happens to me or her, and they don't show up, open the safe. You'll know what to do. I rose slowly, like my boots weighed 100 pounds each, and walked down the hall toward the study. The door creaked open, revealing the same room I remembered from childhood. Shelves lined with history books, maps pinned to the walls, the faint smell of pipe tobacco still clinging to the air. And in the corner, tucked beneath the desk, was the steel safe. It looked smaller now, but no less intimidating. I knelt, brushed dust from the keypad, and punched in the numbers that had been etched into my memory. My Army service number. Beep, click. The lock released. Inside was no gold, no secret treasures, just a thick envelope with my name written in his blocky, all-caps handwriting. Rachel. My breath caught as I tore it open. 4 sheets of paper slipped into my lap. 3 were typed on thick, notarized stock. The 4th was handwritten. The typed pages carried the title, Last Will and Testament of Henry Monroe. My grandfather's full name. Retired Army engineer. Husband. Father. A man who saw further than anyone gave him credit for. The words that followed made my throat burn. If my son and daughter-in-law are not physically present within 12 hours of my or my wife's incapacitation or passing, they forfeit all inheritance rights, financial or otherwise. In such event, all assets, liquid or fixed, are to be transferred to my granddaughter, Captain Rachel Monroe, United States Army. The only person in this family who has upheld the values of honor, duty, and presence. Presence. That word hit me like a bullet. He didn't write love, didn't write loyalty. He wrote presence. Because in the end, that's what mattered most. Showing up. I flipped to the handwritten page. His penmanship shook in places, but the message was clear. Rachel, if you are reading this, they failed the final test. Do not feel guilty. Do not argue. Do not negotiate. Just execute what's written. They chose the beach. You chose the bedside. That is all the court will need to know. P.S. Contact Edward Kane. His number is taped under the drawer. He has been waiting for this call. My chest tightened, not from fear but recognition. He had known. He had planned for this. I slid open the drawer, peeled back the wood underneath, and there it was, a number scribbled in fading Sharpie. I dialed with shaking fingers. Edward Kane, came a firm voice on the second ring. This is Captain Rachel Monroe, I said quietly. A pause. Then, calm as stone, your grandfather told me if you ever called, it meant the rest of them weren't worth a dime. I'm guessing it's time. I swallowed. It's time. Good, he said. I'll file the clause immediately. You don't need to do anything else. You being there is proof enough. I hung up and sat back against the study wall, the envelope clutched to my chest. For the first time since stepping off the plane, I felt the weight shift. Not lighter, sharper. The storm was coming. And I was ready. I didn't have to wait long for the fallout. Barely 10 minutes after hanging up with Edward Kane, the hospital phone rang in the next room. I heard the nurse pick up, her voice low and professional. Then a pause, then sharper, clipped responses. I didn't need to hear the words to know who it was. My mother. By the time I checked my own phone, The storm had already begun. 6 missed calls, then 12, then 20, climbing like a fever. Her name flashing again and again, followed by my father's, then my younger brother's number, the same brother who hadn't called Grandma in half a year, suddenly desperate for family unity. I didn't answer, not one. I sat in the chair beside Grandma's bed, her frail hand resting in mine, and let the phone vibrate against the desk until the battery drained. The machines hissed, blinked, beeped. Each sound drilled into my skull. Each sound reminded me that she was alive but not living. And that her children, my parents, were still 2,000 miles away drinking overpriced cocktails. Around dawn, the light seeped through the blinds. I brewed coffee in her chipped kettle, the same one she'd used since before I was born. The smell almost fooled me into thinking life was normal again, but the monitor in the next room hissed like a cruel reminder. At 9 a.m., Edward Kane met me in the hospital's administrative office. He wore a crisp gray suit, his Marine tattoo barely visible at the edge of his cuff. His eyes were clear, steady, like a man who had seen enough battles to know when the fight was already won. "Your grandparents were meticulous," he said, sliding the will across the table. "Your authority is airtight. You have full medical and financial control now. Don't let them intimidate you." "They'll try," I muttered. He nodded once. "That's why we file first." By mid-morning, the hospital administration confirmed what we already knew. My parents would not be arriving within the required 12-hour window. Their official reason? Travel conflict and emotional distress. I almost laughed. They had 3 days, 3 whole days, and in that time, they'd managed to post 17 photos from Cabo, boat rides, lobster dinners, spa selfies, captions dripping with self-indulgence. "Finally learning to live," one read. "No guilt, no obligations. No obligations." I clenched my jaw as I walked back to Grandma's room. Obligations weren't chains. They were love, responsibility, proof that you showed up when it mattered. At 11:30, I signed the authorization for hospice care. The nurse moved gently, turning off the machines one by one until only Grandma's breathing remained. I held her hand and whispered, "It's okay, I'm here now. You don't have to fight anymore." Her breathing slowed, steadied, softened, like her body finally understood it was allowed to rest. And then, at 12:10 p.m., she was gone. My phone buzzed again. This time I answered. "Rachel!" My mother's voice shrilled through the line. "What the hell did you do?" I looked out the window, watching the sunlight break through the clouds. "She's gone," I said flatly, "and so is your inheritance." Click. They didn't come back right away. It took them 2 more days to finally appear, pulled up in a rented black SUV, luggage in tow, designer sunglasses still perched on their noses, as if the world revolved around them. From Grandma's bedroom window, I watched them step onto the gravel drive like nothing had changed. My father's jaw was tight. His shoulders squared, like he still believed he was in charge of something. My mother, phone glued to her ear, barked orders at some lawyer on the other end. They didn't even pause to notice the flag lowered on the porch. I waited in the study, the envelope laid out on the desk beside Grandpa's photograph. A mug of coffee steamed at my elbow. When the front door opened, their footsteps echoed through the hall. My mother entered first, her eyes immediately landing on the papers. She froze, her face twisting, and then turned on me. "You had no right," she snapped, voice shrill. "No authority to make that decision. Who do you think you are?" I stayed seated, calm, steady. "I'm the one who was here, for 3 days, while you weren't." My father stepped forward, red-faced. "You overstepped, Rachel. This isn't your call. We'll undo whatever stunt you think you've pulled. Our lawyer is already preparing papers." I let the silence stretch, then reached for the small USB drive on the desk. I held it up between 2 fingers. "You mean Michael?" I asked lightly. "Your lawyer? Or your golf buddy? Doesn't matter. Because this changes everything." Their eyes followed the drive as I set it gently on the desk. "What is that?" my mother hissed. "Proof," I said. Grandpa recorded a message last year, for moments exactly like this. He was clear, sharp, deliberate. And he made it known, if you couldn't show up when it mattered, you wouldn't get a cent. My father's hand twitched like he might grab it, but I leaned forward, my voice dropping to steel. Try it. Reach across this desk and take something that doesn't belong to you anymore. See what happens. He stopped mid-motion, his hand frozen in the air before slowly retreating to his side. My mother's face turned blotchy with rage. We are his children. You can't erase that. No, I said quietly. I can't. But you erased yourselves the moment you chose Cabo over her bedside. That wasn't my decision. That was yours. The silence after that was suffocating. They stood there, shifting, calculating, their anger colliding with the reality that the ground had already been ripped from under them. Finally, my father straightened, his voice gravelly. This isn't over. Yes, it is, I replied, tapping the envelope. It ended the moment you didn't show up. They didn't slam the door when they left. No theatrics. Just the quiet click of entitlement walking out of a house it no longer owned. Of course, they didn't accept defeat quietly. My parents had never been the type to retreat with grace. 2 weeks later, I was served papers. They were suing me in state court. Claims of undue influence, elder coercion, fraudulent executor. Dramatic words meant to make noise when facts weren't on their side. Edward Kane just shook his head when I slid the documents across his desk. They're desperate, he said, flipping through the pages. They've got no standing. But they'll drag you through the mud if you let them. I don't care about mud, I told him. I care about truth. The hearing was scheduled for mid-June. A small county courthouse, no jury, just a judge, a recorder, and 2 sides of a fractured family. I wore my uniform that morning. Not for show, not for intimidation, just because it felt right. It still carried the smell of desert dust and hospital floors, and I wanted to walk into that courtroom, carrying the truth of where I'd been. They arrived flanked by 2 lawyers and a third man in a tailored suit who reeked of overconfidence. He smiled at me like this was a cocktail party. I didn't smile back. When the judge called the case to order, their lawyer went first. He painted a melodramatic picture. Me, the soldier granddaughter, swooping in during a moment of tragedy, manipulating my frail grandparents into cutting out their only son. He called me controlling, opportunistic, cold. By the time he sat down, he looked smug, like he'd delivered a closing argument that would echo through history. The judge didn't even blink. Then Edward Kane stood. No theatrics, just calm words. Your Honor, there is no need for speculation. The deceased recorded his intentions himself. He walked to the evidence table, plugged in a flash drive, and pressed play. The screen flickered, and there was Grandpa, sitting in his recliner, gray cardigan around his shoulders, eyes sharp as steel. He leaned forward into the camera. If you're watching this, it means I'm probably dead or close enough. So let's keep it plain. I wrote my will myself, every word. Nobody pressured me, nobody held my hand. The only one who deserves this estate is my granddaughter, Captain Rachel Monroe. Because she's the only one who showed up. My son? Too busy golfing. My daughter-in-law? Too busy at the spa. If they weren't here when their own mother was dying, they don't deserve the dirt under her fingernails. The video cut to black. Silence thickened the room until even the judge seemed to breathe slower. He turned to their side. Do you have any medical records or testimony contradicting this? Their lawyer shuffled papers, stammered, Your Honor, we believe the video is emotionally charged, not factual evidence. The judge raised an eyebrow. That's a no. Edward called me to the stand. I didn't cry. I didn't preach. I just told the truth about the empty house, the machines, the Instagram posts, the final sigh my grandmother released when she finally let go. I ended with one line. I didn't ask to inherit anything. I just stayed. They didn't. The judge left for chambers. 10 minutes later, he returned, papers in hand. This court finds no evidence of coercion or fraud. The will is valid. Captain Monroe is the lawful executor and sole beneficiary. Case dismissed. With prejudice. My parents didn't speak as the gavel fell, but I heard my mother hiss under her breath as I passed. You'll regret this. I didn't look at her. I just kept walking. Winning in court didn't feel like victory. It felt like standing alone on a battlefield after the dust settled. Alive, but surrounded by silence. The estate was mine now. The farmhouse, a stretch of land, some modest investments. My parents stopped calling, though their anger spilled out in other ways. Subtle venom through cousins, online whispers, even an op-ed my father ghost-wrote painting himself as a victim of a militant daughter. I didn't answer any of it, because the truth didn't need defending. It just needed living. One night, sitting in Grandpa's study with the envelope still on the desk, I realized something. This inheritance wasn't supposed to be just about property. Grandpa had left me a mission disguised as a will. He knew money rotted if it just sat in banks. He wanted me to use it, to make it matter. That's how the Monroe Foundation was born. At first, it was just an idea scribbled in my notebook. Provide in-home support for aging veterans and widows who had no family left to care for them. Nurses, transportation to appointments, grief counseling, even funeral honor guards. Basic dignity, given freely. I sold one of the old investment properties and turned the farmhouse into our first office. The same room where Grandpa's safe had sat now became a space for legal aid and will preparation, free of charge. On the wall, I framed a photo of him in uniform beside a plaque with his words, "Honor before comfort." People came, quietly, hesitantly at first. A former Marine with no family who needed help paying rent. An Army medic who hadn't spoken to his kids in 10 years, but still wanted someone to check on him twice a week. A Coast Guard retiree who only came for the burnt coffee and small talk because silence at home was worse. One day, a 91-year-old Navy radio tech named Harold wept in my office when I told him we'd cover his rent and send a nurse twice a week. He gripped my hand with trembling fingers and whispered, "I thought I was done being remembered." That was the moment I knew this was bigger than revenge. This was redemption, not for my parents, but for the forgotten ones who had been left behind by families too busy chasing sunsets and excuses. The local paper picked up the story. The headline read, "Granddaughter turns betrayal into brotherhood." They ran a photo of me outside the farmhouse, in uniform, smiling faintly under the caption, "The Monroe Foundation serves the forgotten." My mother texted me a screenshot of the article. No words, just a single red question mark. I never replied, because sometimes silence is the loudest answer of all. 1 year later, the farmhouse garden bloomed again. Rows of folding chairs lined the grass where Grandma used to grow tomatoes. At the front sat a single empty chair draped with a bronze star and a framed photo of my grandparents. It was Memorial Day, and the Monroe Foundation was hosting its first ceremony. No parade floats, no brass bands, no speeches from politicians. Just quiet. Just truth. Veterans, widows, nurses, and neighbors filled the seats. Some wore uniforms faded with age, others carried canes or wheelchairs. All of them carried stories that didn't make the evening news. I stood at the front, my hands trembling slightly as I held the note cards I'd written the night before. Then I tucked them away, because this moment didn't need rehearsed lines. It needed honesty. When I came back from Iraq, I began, I expected to be forgotten by strangers. I didn't expect to find my own family absent when it mattered most. My grandmother died with machines for company, and my parents were on a beach in Cabo. Heads nodded, lips pressed tight. They understood absence. They understood abandonment. But my grandfather left me a lesson, I continued. He wrote it down in his will, and he lived it in his life. Presence matters more than words. Honor before comfort. That's why this foundation exists, to make sure no one here ever dies alone, to make sure showing up still means something. I read the last words Grandpa ever wrote to me, his handwriting shaky but certain. Don't fight for applause. Fight for the ones who aren't in the room to clap. The silence that followed was heavy but not empty. It was sacred. After the ceremony ended, a man in his late 30s approached me. Full dress blues, chest full of ribbons, seal insignia glinting in the sun. He saluted sharply, then dropped his hand with a small smile. "I served with your cousin, Michael," he said. He told me what your family tried to do. I thought I'd be angry when I met you. Instead, I'm proud. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. He leaned closer, his voice low. Takes guts to walk alone. When he left, I stayed by the empty chair. The photo of my grandparents stared back at me, their faces steady and familiar. That's when it hit me. My inheritance wasn't the house or the land or the accounts. My inheritance was purpose. A purpose that didn't rot, didn't fade, didn't need applause. A purpose that grew silently like honor does, because in the end, family isn't proven by blood or promises. It's proven by presence. And when everyone else chose the beach, I chose the bedside. And that choice will echo longer than any sunset in Cabo ever could. True family is defined not by words or appearances, but by who shows up when it matters most. Honor lives in presence, not excuses.